Hi, I'm Hannah Flark, for those that don't know, and there's a picture of me and my dog Yeti. So currently for work, I am a long-term substitute at Westfield Middle School. I started in February because I graduated my bachelor's in December, so I am a long-term sub at Westfield Middle School. I have been in PE for 10 weeks, and now I'm in the classroom until the end of the school year. On top of that, I'm also the director at Roots Soccer Academy in Westfield, so I coach kids almost every night after school for a couple hours, soccer and different skills related to soccer. As you can tell, because I graduated in December, I do not have that much teaching experience. I have less than a year of teaching experience because I graduated in December, but I am at Westfield Middle School, and I have had experience both in the classroom setting and in a physical education setting. Currently, I am licensed for health and phys ed, so having that classroom experience has really helped me grasp how the classroom works in case I have to be a health teacher. And then I learned a lot about PE and teaching the kids the different skills by being in the classroom. My favorite aspect of teaching kids is finally watching that skill or whatever they're learning click. At the end of the day, if they're able to do it, all that time and effort, even from coaching kids soccer, when they finally get it and it finally clicks and you see that bright smile on their face, that is why I'm reminded of why I do it. I like to see their eyes light up, see what they have to do, and just their excitement when they finally get it after weeks and weeks of practicing it for soccer. And then I taught my kids lacrosse at the middle school, and after a couple of days of practicing it, when they finally got it, their hand-eye coordination clicked, that excitement on their face is why I keep doing what I'm doing. Now, of course, there are many difficult aspects of teaching as well. I struggle the most with keeping all my students engaged. Working at the middle school level is very hard. A lot of kids are developing their own personalities. They don't want to do what everyone else is doing. So that's where I kind of struggle. I try to make my lessons as engaging as I can to include all the students, but it's very hard to make something that everyone likes. I typically have 1 or 2 students that don't want to do it, even though 25 of them are, and that's where I'm struggling the most right now. And I just want to be able to decrease that number as I go on, and only having 2 kids in the class doing it is great, but I really want everyone to be doing it. That's my end goal. I want everyone at the end of the day to be participating in some kind of physical activity, physical movement, to keep their bodies moving. The area of study I would consider my expertise in is physical education. I got my bachelor's in movement science with a concentration in phys ed, and I am currently working on my master's in phys ed as well. So teaching children skills and concepts to live a lifelong physical enjoyment, keeping their bodies healthy and active throughout their lifetime, is kind of my area of study. One of the most important questions I think I have regarding phys ed and just everything going on in the world right now with COVID-19 and everything is, how is COVID-19 going to affect student BMI scores in the long run? A few things I thought of are, will they increase? Did that 3-month lockdown last year really put a strain on students by not being able to do physical activity, by not getting healthy foods? A lot of supermarkets were out of the healthier foods, out of fresh meat, out of things like eggs and milk, and parents had to find other things to feed their kids, especially with parents who are in lower incomes. They obviously go to more for the junk food than they go for the higher up healthier foods because it is more expensive. But how is that overall going to affect student BMI engagement? And are schools going to do something about that to maybe help decrease the BMI scores if they do increase due to COVID? Is that something they'll do? Is it not? Is it going to become a nationwide thing? Will PE time increase because of that as well? So that's kind of the question I have that I've been pondering for a couple months ever since COVID started. So that is my question. A few more questions I have is, how does physical education affect the students' ability to concentrate in academics? We know that students are having a harder time concentrating. My students especially, they are glued to their Chromebooks. They got them taken away for MCAS for 2 weeks, and they are lost without them. They don't know how to write with paper and pencil. They really don't know how to do anything without them. Their free time they spent playing games on the computer, and now they have to socialize with their peers. So physical activity actually helps them concentrate. I know I've been taking my kids outside a lot for math breaks, and after throwing the ball around for a couple minutes and stuff, they come back into the classroom, they're talking with all their friends, they got all the jitters out, and they're able to have conversations with each other instead of just being glued to their screens. Another question I have are, what are some strategies that could be incorporated to help students handle stress at home and at school? So right now, due to the pandemic, due to everything that's going on, remote learning, hybrid learning, in-class learning, students are experiencing a lot of stress. I see it firsthand every day. Students are coming in tired, they are exhausted, they have no effort to work in school to get their grades up. They're like, if I fail, I fail, like I really don't care. A lot of my kids go to bed at 3 or 4 in the morning and come to school for 8 o'clock, which is not great at all, but they are experiencing a lot of stress. The way school is right now, it is stressful for the students and the teachers as well, but the students have to figure out how to learn in this type of environment. How do they learn with a mask on all day long? How do they interact with their peers when they're supposed to be social distancing? If they can't play games outside, what are they supposed to do at recess? The loss of technology for them really hits big, especially where I'm working. They all want to rip out their phones every second they get. They want to play games. I've made a few comments like, oh, what would you do without your phone for the day? And a lot of my kids are like, I don't know, like, I wouldn't survive without my phone, which I see as a big issue. So I think finding strategies to help incorporate students to handle that stress and get over their fears a little bit of in-person interactions might help. And being in phys ed, you're able to do that through movement and games, which can then translate into their other activities in the classroom. My last question I have is, can situational interests, cognitive engagement, and achievement increase overall student engagement in physical education? So I talked about how one of my struggles is getting all my students to be engaged in phys ed and getting them all to participate in the activity we're currently performing in. And I want to know if different situational interests, different cognitive engagement, if that will increase my engagement in phys ed. I can do a bunch of different things for them, but will all of that combined really increase their interest, or will only get a certain students that want to play a certain activity or want to do a certain skill, and the other ones will kind of shy away? Like, how do I make that overall for all my kids? Of course, if it's something fun, the kids want to do it, but if it's to learn a new skill or it's to play a sport they don't like, they really don't want to do it. I did a lacrosse unit, and a lot of my kids were not interested at all. They wanted to play football, they didn't want to play lacrosse, but they couldn't get over the fact that they can't touch the same equipment as other kids, and they really wanted nothing to do with lacrosse, even though it's fun, it's new, most of them have not played it before. It's getting over that interest of, how do I bring that to my students in an engaging way, but yes, still be able to teach them something and for them to learn from it. For evidence-based practice, I have not had a lot of experience with this over the last year because I am just been a long-term substitute. But while I was in the PE class for the 10 plus weeks I was there, the teacher and I that I was co-teaching with did a lot of positive results on their curriculum outcomes. So we collected data based on whether they were meeting those goals or not, their activity levels. We did do the fitnessgram with them, which is one of the biggest evidence-based practice the middle school uses to see how their scores change throughout the semester in PE to see if they're able to improve them. Of course, coming off of quarantine and being home for 2 months, the kids' scores were lower than they would normally be. We did compare them to the previous years when they were in school for the whole year, and they were a little lower. But again, that is expected because the kids were inactive, they were eating non-nutritional foods, and they didn't have a lot of free time to really do anything or to get outside because of COVID. By taking stats, especially focused towards physical education, I think is really going to help improve the quality of my lessons, my performances to the students, and how I teach them. I'll be able to use more of the right tools to enhance their student learning, and the data will help me solve problems related to learning skills. So for example, when I was student teaching, my teacher that I was working with did a evaluation on throwing patterns, and a lot of the kids were having problems understanding and learning to step with their opposite foot. So what we did for that, or what I came up with, I was like, hey, why don't we put 2 different color hotspots down? one for the right foot, one for the left foot, so they know what foot to step with based on what hand they're throwing with, and that worked out great. But through stats, I'll be able to take the pre-test data and understand, like, hey, like only like 5% of my kids understood that. How can I use different tools and to entice the students to learn that skill better and to make them perform that skill at the correct phases, so that way they can mature in that pattern. So stats is really going to help me personally with learning the data and being able to say, hey, like my kids only got like 10% of that, or 5% of the kids got that. What can I do as a teacher then to improve that score so it goes up the next time for the entire population? Of course, it's going to be different for grades, because at the elementary level, those mature patterns are totally drastic from kindergarten and first grade to 4th and 5th grade. Obviously, the 4th and 5th grade is going to have no problem, but how do you retransition that back down so that when they do get to 4th and 5th grade, they already know it and they're able to do it maturely, so we can play and advance their skills and activities for lifelong physical enjoyment. So that is a little bit about me and my perspective and my goals and what challenges me as a physical educator.